Ladies and gentlemen, he has done it. Joe Biden has officially fixed the problem that he himself created, inflation. Because on Friday, August 12th, Nanci Pelosi, aka the greatest stock investor of all time, banged her gavel as the House of Representatives passed the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, with President Biden expecting to sign. Which means there's no more inflation, right? Well, that's the question we're going to answer in this video. Is this bill going to truly reduce inflation or perhaps make it worse? And most importantly, how will this affect our overall economy? Now, be sure to stick around to the end of the video because on top of sharing my personal thoughts on this bill as an investor, we'll also be peeling back the curtains on what's really happening, especially with inflation. Now, with that said, let's do a quick breakdown on where the money is going and how they're funding it. Total revenue raised for this bill is $737 billion, with $222 billion coming from 15%. You know what? Let me save you the technical mumbo jumbo and tell you the quick and simple version. The $737 billion is primarily going towards climate change and energy security, along with deficit reduction. And by deficit reduction, like the US government not being complete morons for just 1 hour. At the end of the day, this bill is really trying to accomplish three things: new jobs, financial incentives for climate change, and paying down the deficit. But honestly, after reading it, I don't really see much effectiveness in this bill doing any of those things. Let's take new jobs first and foremost. The policy writers of this bill will claim that the Inflation Reduction Act will produce 9 million jobs over the next 10 years, mainly due to the manufacturing of clean energy equipment, which is a bit of a stretch considering that you have to have the consumer demand to purchase these clean energy equipment, with solar panels being a great example, to then have the manufacturing supply to even support it. But let's say for the sake of the example that they magically get the financial buy-in from the average American and from the masses who, by the way, don't even have $500 for an emergency. Yet, let's pretend like we all have the money to make installing solar panels in all our homes cost effective. Because even if all that occurs and 9 million jobs are indeed created, well, you're still at a net loss for overall job creation. Because a huge chunk of the money being raised for this bill is actually coming from enforcing a minimum 15% corporate tax rate, which we all know if you increase taxes on businesses, that historically means job losses across the board. In fact, according to the National Association of Manufacturers, even the Biden increase from a 21 to a 28% increase on corporate tax rate would result in 1 million jobs lost in just the first 2 years, along with a decrease of $117 billion in GDP by next year of 2023. And that's just manufacturing. Keep in mind that corporate taxes hurt small to mid-level businesses more than anyone, yet they're responsible for 65% of the workforce in the United States. Now, of course, there are two other things that this bill really represents, which is climate and energy, and also deficit reduction, which in addressing climate change and energy security, a lot of the execution of this bill will be contingent on the average American and the masses buying in to this initiative, with the incentives coming from tax credits to purchase electric vehicles, such as $7,500 in credit for new electric vehicles and $4,000 for used ones, along with tax credits on having solar panels installed in your personal residence. However, according to Consumer Affairs, the average cost of just the installation of these solar panels amounts to $12,000, and that's after current federal tax incentives. Now, with that said, here's, in my opinion, the most unfortunate aspect of this bill, which is that the IRS will have an increase in revenue of $80 billion, of which most of it will go towards auditing. And by the way, 70 to 90% of the estimated $200 billion the IRS expects to collect from this new bill will come from businesses making less than $200,000. And in regards to individuals, 77% of all audits done by the IRS last year of 2021 were targeting individuals making less than $200,000 a year, compared to only 11.8% of those audits targeting individuals making at least 7 figures. And despite Biden claiming that those making less than $400,000 won't be affected, there's absolutely zero evidence that they won't be the ones who are actually the most affected. But of course, Biden can't be lying to us. Can he? I mean, if he is, I just don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Which leads us to the original question that's on the table, which is, how is this bill going to affect inflation and the overall economy? Well, to shed some light on that, I want to direct your attention to this amazing piece written by the Wharton School of Business, which is pretty well known for being one of the best business and finance schools in the whole country. And their model, known as the Penn-Wharton business model, actually calculated the effects and the results that this bill will have on the overall economy and inflation as a whole. Now, there are a lot of technical aspects communicated in this piece, but to summarize their work, there are two things the Penn-Wharton Business School came to the conclusion for that really affect the question on inflation. In fact, in regards to inflation, the Penn-Wharton business model shows us that this bill would indeed reduce inflation. So much so that in 5 years, the amount that it will decrease the inflation rate off of where it's at right now, which is approximately 9%, is a whopping, drumroll please, 0.1%. 0.1%.
0.1%.
And oh, by the way, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, according to Wharton, will actually decrease our nation's GDP by 0.1% in the future for the year 2031. Now, if you ask me, you have to fix the overall financial system and not just pass these bills that really don't do anything. At the end of the day, every person is responsible for their own finances and their own well-being, as opposed to looking towards our government to take care of us, because trust me, they're going to take advantage of that every opportunity they get for the benefit of their own control and their own power. And unfortunately, it looks like my generation, along with the next one coming up, are both walking down that path. Which, speaking of the future, I want to encourage you guys to check out our recent video we posted on what the World Economic Forum is wanting to do to your retirement funds. So go ahead and click on that video in the end screen. And on top of that, I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. And until next time, friends, I'll see you guys in the next one.